Well, welcome everyone to another episode of the Human Spirit Podcast. I'm here with, is it Dr. Luke?
I go by Luke.
Are you go by Luke?
Yeah, I go by Luke.
I'll keep it
Casual.
casual.
Yeah.
Max, you want to start off by telling us a bit more about yourself, what you do, so obviously you're a chiro,
Yeah.
how you got into that, what sparked that, and your journey to that,
Yeah.
to that, I guess, vocation.
Yeah. So I think it's the typical narrative where when you're a child, you have an obsession with the body and, and health and everything like that. So I've always had that interest in that. And then so as I grew up, I kind of bummed high school and I kind of just scraped into uni. And while I was there, that's when I got my act together and I was trying to find some purpose. I was trying to find some meaning with what I wanted to do in my life. And then it just so happened that at that time, I ended up getting a low back injury. I ended up getting a disc bulge and I have 24/7 sciatica, nerve pain down the leg, and it wouldn't go away. And it got to a point, I was only 18 at the time, 19, and I'm having 24/7 back pain and nerve pain. It was so debilitating. So I went to everyone. I saw a neurosurgeon, I saw physios, I saw every GP. I was on medication and nothing was doing it. So then I finally just heard of a chiro and decided to go. And then within a couple of sessions, the pain had gone. So from there, I was just like, oh, wow, there is something to it. And then I got into uni. I got into my master's for chiropractic from there. And that's when I kind of got my act together. It was a very transitional phase of my life, going from feeling like a boy to feeling like a teenager. I didn't feel like I was a man yet, but I felt like I was transitioning. I was in a phase of transitioning from boy to man eventually. And so from there, I started developing an identity of someone who can help and who can guide people to better health, essentially. And so from there, I ended up having to make tough decisions as to whether I wanted to go down a route of chiropractic that makes more money, or if I wanted to go a route that was more aligned with me that probably wasn't going to make as much money, at least in the short term. And then so from there, I just worked at a couple of clinics where I just learned a lot of skills and I just started accumulating as much information as I could from all these different practices. And then now I'm at a point where I'm able to integrate a lot of different modalities into my treatment. I take pride in the fact that I don't treat in this typical chiropractic style where it's just adjust, adjust, adjust. I can do more with it. I can do some functional neurology stuff. I can do rehabilitation. If you've torn your ACL, we can go through that whole 9-month procedure of healing that ACL and getting you back to doing whatever sports. I can go through that old school chiropractic way if you just need to be adjusted or whatever it is. And then I can go down a more traditional physio route where it's a lot of hands-off stuff. It's a lot of rehab, everything like that. And so now, I'm just at a point where I'm trying to integrate all that together depending on the patient. And it feels really level in my body. I feel balanced in my body that I can go down any path that I want with a patient in terms of musculoskeletal pain or, discomfort or neurological issues or anything like that. And I can just mold it to the patient in front of me. So it's been this huge transition from uni, I would say, and when I got into chiropractic, because I went to an old school chiropractor who just adjusted me 3 times probably all up, and then that was it, and my back was fine. And then so transitioning from that to a place of now trying to integrate as much as I can to create a full experience for patients in a patient-centered approach. And I think that's very important to define, because a lot of practitioners, I think, go down the practitioner-centered approach, as in I have my modality and this is what works for me, so I want the patients that fit in line with this. Whereas I try to go the other way and I try to figure out, what do you need, what do you like, what works for you, and how can I mold myself to that? And so for some people, just be adjust, adjust, adjust. Some people it will be, I want to go through rehab. Some people it's like, I need to regulate your nervous system. I need to increase your vagus nerve stimulation and try and get that working, which will then help you rest, digest, recover, stronger immune system, stronger digestive system, help you to sleep, just clear your mind. And so that's where I'm at the moment.
Man, it's awesome, man. I can definitely vouch for that too, bro. That session was pretty, it was incredible, man. To have the different modalities at hand to be able to suit my needs as well in that session. But yeah, quick question. So you said you went down a different path that was more you.
Yes.
So how did you know that there was another path that was more you?
Yeah.
And what does more you?
So I knew, like, when I was at uni and when I got into chiropractic, that was a time where I started questioning things. And I think, at least in chiropractic, I don't know in other professions, I don't know if enough people do that, where you question everything. They used to say the adjustment pushes your spine up and down and left and right and, does this. And then I'm like, yeah, does it? All right, how is it doing that? If it is, we used to ask the question, and I still ask it now because I tutor at uni. I tutor for the 4th year, so second last year. And I ask them, what does an adjustment do? Oh, it improves range of motion and it reduces pain. Yeah, sure, but how? And so I went on that journey on my own where I started to question everything. I was a bit cynical. I was like, are you sure that's what it's doing? How can you explain that this is what's going on? Like, for example, a classic one is the hip flexor release. You release the hip flexor from the belly and people get relief. But we know that the hip flexor is so deep in the gut that you can't actually touch it. So how's it creating that change? And so I'd ask those people these questions. They'd be like, no, if you go deep enough, you can do it and you can change it. I'd be like, no, that's not right. So then I'd go on my own journey and I try and figure out what's going on and how does that work. And then it's just awareness from the brain to that area that then reduces the tone of the muscle. So then it's like, so now I have an answer that feels right in me, right? So going down that route, I had the opportunities to go down to clinics where they were high-paced clinics. So these are clinics where you see upwards of 200 patients a week. I've had clinics where you see over 500 patients a week, but you're treating people for 5 minutes, or you're treating people for 10 minutes, and you're also treating 3 people at the same time. So 3 people come in that 10 minutes and you're treating them all at the same time, and you do that over, like 6 times in an hour. So that's 60 people. And then you do that over a couple of hours. It's ridiculous numbers. And I had the opportunity to go into clinics that were like that. And look, they work for some people they don't. I mean, just like chiropractic works or medicine works or whatever. And so I had that opportunity and I had to sit with myself and I had to ask, do I want to make money right now or do I want to go with what's in line with me? And this is where I tried to unpack what's in line with me. I figured out what's my purpose in life. My purpose in life, at least from a profession, is to help people and to guide people to better health.
Yeah.
And I knew that if I went down the route of seeing high numbers, I couldn't do that. And that would cause nervous system dysregulation. I'd be stressed. I wouldn't feel aligned in my body. What I'd be practicing and what I want to do would not be in line, and that was going to cause stress in my body.
Yeah.
So I made the choice.
It's interesting that you do chiropractic stuff.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about alignment.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But I guess there's 2 things there before I jump onto that. I have this theory that the value of truth, so the pursuit of truth, goes hand in hand with knowledge.
Right.
Because if you tell the truth or desire the truth, then you come to knowledge a lot faster.
Right.
But if you're ignorant of the fact and you lied to yourself in some sense, right? Like if I just said, okay, great, I'll take on what you say, then the hip flexor does this thing. I never explore it, never question it. So I never get to the answer as fast as you would. And so there's something to do with speed and acceleration of knowledge and truth. That's my theory on that. So I think that's how people advance. So if I say someone want to get more intellectual, be more honest with yourself. And then that comes in hand with it. As opposed to, like, oh, I'm not smart enough. It's like, actually, no, just tell the truth more. And you become smarter. Back to your alignment and being aligned in integrity, right, with yourself. Do you feel that there's like the emotional aspect? So keeping in alignment emotionally with your values, and that has a correlation to the alignment of your structure and anatomically.
100%.
Okay.
100%. If you're not in line with yourself, essentially, then it's going to manifest into pains and aches in your bodies. So take me, for example. I know, for example, not emotions, but if I'm stressed, my stress will manifest in my left lower back. And that's where I initially had the pain. And I think there must be something to unpack there with trauma and something deeper in that kind of route. But when I'm stressed, my low back goes. And I can do all the treatment in the world and it just won't resolve. Once I clear my mind, once I get my emotions regulated, or if not, once I let the emotions leave my body, instead of suppressing them, if I let them go, then I find that the low back will get better. And then that's what you see with a lot of people. You see, look, I stick into my lane in terms of I'm not a psychologist or I'm not a mind worker or anything like that. And I'm cautious of how far I go down that route, because if I, for example, elicit something emotionally within you and then it creates this huge effect in your body and you don't know what to do with it, and I'm not equipped with the skills to be able to handle that, then where are we at that point? Like this is dangerous territory, right?
Yeah.
So then it's about recognizing that, recognizing if there's something emotionally going on, recognizing if there's something psychological, even spiritual. If you're not spiritually in line with your purpose, then I'm sure that's going to manifest into pain. So then it's like, okay, who do we need to work with in order to work through those matters? And then let's see how your pain goes anyway. Well, let's see how your function improves. A lot of the time, you might not need a chiropractor.
Yeah.
Like, I got low back pain. I got headaches. Or I got what's going on.
It could be something.
It could be something else. So let's work on your emotions. Let's work on your psychology. Let's work on your spirituality, whatever it may be. And then we kind of then unpack that. And as you work through that, we see how it goes. So something that I do, for example, I don't go into like the depths of the emotions or the psychological impact of whatever's going on in your life, but I'll still try and regulate your nervous system. And, we did this where like it's stimulation to the eyes, it's stimulation to the nose for smell and emotions. We can do taste if we wanted to. We can stimulate the vagus nerve through releasing through the neck. All this, and this at least can ground your body, make you a bit more present. And then sometimes you just naturally find some emotions or some thoughts that have been suppressed. And then you just naturally I have been feeling a bit stressed about this, or, this is coming up. And it's like, cool. Like, you need to unpack that on your own. This is not my field.
Yeah.
Or see someone who can help you.
Yeah, man, because I can definitely... So after our session, I felt before coming into our session, I already knew that anxiety and stress is trapped in the jaw.
Yeah.
For me, like, I know that when I'm... but also excitement.
Yeah.
I feel like they're quite neurologically the same. So when I'm excited about something, I try to keep it... Sometimes I try to keep it down.
Yes.
I'm like trying to tense my jaw up to not over show it or something.
Yeah.
And then it picks up and I feel like quite tense there.
Right.
And then after leaving, my thoughts changed. And I was like, okay, I'm a bit more aware now of the fact that I'm having this, it was always in the background, but then I became hyper aware of it.
Yeah.
And so the next day I spent just actually journaling about why do I feel this way and why is it stored in the body here? And, first it's excitement, anxiety, but then where did excitement and anxiety come from originally? It was the first time I experienced that, and it tends to be at home. And so I find a lot of psychological issues and stress comes from home, but it's definitely not about blame. It's more about acceptance and acknowledgement. And because I realized that my body, or my mind has been able to intellectualize things and has a positive mindset on the world.
Yeah.
However, I realized that the body hasn't caught up yet.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, shit.
Yes.
It's like my mind's been running a marathon alongside the body.
Yeah.
The body tripped over about 10 years ago and the mind just turned back to have a look and his body's still stuck at the start line.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go picking back up again.
There you go.
That's how I kind of felt.
It's interesting that you brought up acceptance and acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Because they're concepts in modern day manual therapy that we swear by. And so it's like, if we bring acceptance, if we bring acknowledgement and reassurance into what's going on in our condition, then I guess maybe if you go a little bit deeper, it regulates you and you have a bit of understanding and then you can go onto the process of healing. But if you're not accepting, if you're denying, if you're suppressing, if you're rejecting whatever it is that's going on in your body, then chances are it's going to manifest in another way. So if we look strictly biomechanical, if you got low back pain, for example, and you just deny the pain, you ignore it, you push through and everything like that, well, then you're suppressing, right? And then maybe that means that you're suppressing, psychologically, or you're suppressing emotions because pain is an emotion, right? So then you're suppressing that, and then you just ignore it. And so I guess my question that I don't know the answer to is what happens 20 years time from there?
Yeah.
What happens?
I think that's the question a lot of us maybe don't ask, but it's one I definitely ask. I'm like, I don't know the impact of this long term.
Yeah.
Although short term, I'm like, man, this could manifest in a lot of different ways, especially stress in the body, right?
100%.
Like stress in general. It's the number one killer in today's society.
Yes.
So
without a doubt.
And another theory that I have that I like to discuss with you is the anterior tilt that I was mentioning.
Yes.
Is that I feel like society has a very yang energy, and to clarify yang energy, it's very like looking forward into the future. It's very action orientated, which can be quite dismissive of emotions. So you could say like your future thinking is like outside the voice, it's external. So external expectations.
Yes.
Materialism. And then, so the flip side is internal expectations and spirituality. And so I found in my coaching sessions that a lot of people have interior shoulder rotation.
Yes.
And have anterior pelvic tilt.
Yes.
And their bodies are leaning forward.
Yes.
Which means that I think that their thought process and philosophy is so focused on the future that the body now represents that, and you can see it.
Yeah.
And so what's needed to bring things into balance is looking back at the posterior chain of the body.
Yes.
And I guess pulling the body back into alignment.
Yes.
And so what's your theory on that? What have you seen with your patients?
Yeah.
And how are you helping with that alongside your
Yes. So it's very interesting you bring that up, because with what I've learned in terms of functional neurology, the left side of the brain is about pushing forward. It's about essentially making money and grinding, and it's very logical and analytical, and there's not much emotional intelligence in there. The right brain is more focused on emotional intelligence, connecting with others, deep, intimate friendships and relationships. It's about feeling within your body. Right? The left brain doesn't typically feel the body. It just focuses on small goals moving forward. So from my perspective, from a neurological perspective, it's like if you hear someone, they're like, oh, I'm hustling and I'm working 24/7 and I'm not stopping, everything like that. I'm like, cool, how are your relationships going at the moment? And like, obviously they're not going to be good on the best of times, but then you go, are you good at reading body language? Are you good at like noticing when something's not right in your body? And then chances are they'll be like, no. So then from my perspective, in a chiropractic treatment, it's like, cool, let's now stimulate your right side of your brain. And then let's see if we can create changes that can help you regulate your nervous system and then go back into your body, which then means that, okay, noticing what's important in your life. Yes, okay, making money is important and doing well in your career is important. But there's other stuff, the body, connections, networking, all this stuff, the tribal patterns that we're evolutionarily designed to do. So it's important to stimulate that. And where I learned all this functional neurology, it was actually interesting. It was with kids with autism and ADHD.
Right.
And so I learned it off a guy called Robert Melillo. He's a chiropractor and he's done a lot of neurological, he's a neuroscientist or something like that in the US. And he works with autistic kids. And so he noticed that with the autistic kids, they don't actually use their right brain as much as they should. And so he noticed that they don't have the emotional intelligence. They can't read body language. There's no shame or embarrassment. And so if he stimulated that, they would get those traits back, and then their symptoms related with the autism reduced. If not, he would claim that they're completely resolved. I don't agree with that, but he would say they're reduced. And so that was very interesting, and I'm able to take that understanding of the left brain and what it means. Think of like your typical engineer or scientist that likes to be suppressed in a room. They're just isolated from the world. That's the typical strong left brainer, right? And then the right brain, so we see this, is people that read overly, like into too much of what other people perceive. They're hyper-focused on other people's perceptions and thoughts, and they can read other people's body language probably too well, and it disservices them. So then it's like, okay, cool. And then they have that shame and that embarrassment, and it's probably overactive. So then you've got to bring him that left brain confidence, that left brain charisma, and then you stimulate the left side. Then if you want to stimulate the left brain, you've got to put stimulation on the right body and then onto the left side of the face, and then you get that balance, and you find people, their anxiety improves, their social anxiety improves. I know one woman where she couldn't even go and order something at a shop. Like if she's going to get food, she had to get someone to order for her. And so we stimulated her left side of her brain. We built up that confidence, and gradually she was able to do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I think from neurological perspective, I think that's connected with what your perspective.
So I think philosophical too. So
Yes.
Everything is about balance, but back to the body for a second, the body is trying to regulate homeostasis the entire time. So by homeostasis is just finding balance within the body.
100%.
And as long as you can maintain balance within the body can survive.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that Eastern philosophy has, and this is another one, like, you know how Jordan Peterson spoke about, like, if you had right hemispherical damage,
Yes.
meaning you have the left side of the brain working,
Yes.
can you confirm this as well?
Yes.
That the left side can't recognize the right side of the body.
Yes.
It becomes paralyzed.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which means that the logic side of the brain
Yep.
can't see the emotional side of the brain.
100%.
And so if you had a right side of the brain working and the left damage, you can still recognize both parts of the body. Still move both parts.
No, you wouldn't be able to recognize the left side of the body. You wouldn't notice that.
Okay.
So that's there's two parts of the brain that we're talking about. One's called the primary somatosensory cortex, which basically put simply, it's all the sensation you feel in the body. It's processed in this part, right? So on the left side of the body, it all goes to the right side of the brain.
Yeah.
And then you have that, and then you have the motor output as well. So like if I want to say click my fingers, that's all coming from my left side of the brain.
Yeah.
There is, though, if someone had a lesion to the left side of the brain, then they will have very strong right traits and they'll be out of balance. So then they will find everything hyper real, hyper realistic, over realistic in terms of, for example, reading into people's body language way, way, way too much. Like, oh, you didn't respond to my text in 5 minutes. That means you hate me. You never want to talk to me, and I'm the worst person.
So it's associated with meaning and connection.
Yes, the right brain.
The right brain.
The right brain. The left brain would be very logical, analytical, numbers focused. So you typically, this is very stereotypical, but if they had a lesion to the left side of their brain, to their right side of the brain, and they only had their left, they would be very logical, linear. They couldn't be creative. They wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I try and map this over the world, right?
Yep.
So you could split that. Imagine the world was a brain.
Yep.
And you had the left side, which is west.
Yes, 100%.
And east, which is right.
Yes.
And funny that the west and east, right?
Yeah.
Is literally left and right.
Yeah, right.
So they've labeled it. We've labeled it just by coincidence, or not by coincidence, I think on purpose.
Yeah.
Literally, that's been labeled west and east.
Yes.
Because you could go either way because the world's round.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there you go.
Right?
That's interesting
And
perspective.
so it's interesting that that's how it's been labeled.
Yeah.
And how Western culture has a linear perspective on life.
Yes.
Very logical.
Yes.
That's why I think that there's a lot more money, success, progression in Western culture and Western civilization. But at the expense of our emotional intelligence, which is continuation, which is reincarnation, which is Eastern philosophy and stuff like that, which is the right side of the brain.
Yeah.
So it's funny that I think it's fractal.
Yeah.
Like what's happening in an individual and what's happening in the world is it can kind of just expand out. And so again, by understanding yourself and these two different, I guess, elements of yourself, like black and white, good and evil, left and right, logic versus emotion, it kind of then plays out in the world on a larger scale as well.
Yeah.
And so where is the health industry heading to in terms of marrying these two things together? Because ultimately that's what religion is too.
Yeah.
And so would you tie in your side note to your work, but really your religious aspect, do you have a perspective on that as well?
I have a personal religious perspective.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm Christian, right? So I believe in God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And I have the idea that the Holy Spirit is within all of us, right?
Yeah.
So every time I treat, at the beginning of the day, I say a prayer for God to light up the Holy Spirit within me, to allow God to like treat through my hands, use my hands to guide and be guided by the Holy Spirit to guide me. As for modern health and the practice, like just overall the health industry, I don't know at the moment. I think we're at a very interesting phase where people are questioning the norm, and practitioners as well as people, like patient, like everyday people, they're trying to figure it out. And I think we're at the point now where we're not sure which way to go. Like, we're getting more and more information from the East about ways to treat illnesses that we thought were not curable. But there really isn't enough evidence to back that up. So then people are in this limbo of, I don't know what to do. Like, do I?
Yeah, which is exactly the issue with the Eastern philosophy and culture. However, that there's that part of Western culture that's missing the meaning and connection and faith.
Yeah.
Right? So it's something that we might not have to know. And I think that is also the issue of the left brain. It has to know everything and make everything logical.
Yes.
And that's also, by the way, destroying our intellect and our truth. Because I find that a lot of things innately, like especially like I know that sitting down for me is not great.
Yeah.
But we wait for studies to come out through science it's like, I think that's slowing us down actually. Is the fact that we can't just decide on things and be okay with being wrong. Like it's okay to take on the perspective, be wrong, and then change it. But we don't tend to take on anything until we think it's right. And that causes, I think, anxiety and causes this like lack of action as well.
Yeah.
So it kind of falls in on itself. Logic kind of plays in on itself as well.
So I guess it goes down back to what you said about the truth and wisdom.
Yeah.
So if your truth was, I know in my body
exactly
that sitting is not good for me, but then you needed research to back you up, or if the research said against that, or if the research said, because back in the day, cigarettes, they used to say that cigarettes were good for you, or they used to give babies cocaine for their teeth, right?
Exactly.
But if you knew in yourself the truth, then you go against that.
It's that's what I think the true knowledge is, and what we've lost touch of. Yeah. It's like we've given away our own truth and taken on the word of the world of the Father archetype. And so we wait for decisions to be made from that. Yeah. And a lot of my errors in life have actually come from waiting for an answer from someone else. Whether it's investing, whether it's and the thing is, like, it's okay because I could be wrong still, but I'm going to learn the lesson and I'm going to integrate that and be better in the future, as opposed to resentful because like I was waiting, they gave me the false information and I feel hard done by. Yeah. And that's also on you too, because you gave up your truth. Yeah. And so you actually betrayed yourself. Yeah. And for me, that's actually what a sin is. Yes. A sin for me is when you go against your truth, your alignment, and then you have to be atoned to act one again. Yeah. And then bring that back in, as Jordan Peterson says. That's my perspective on following your own heart, following your own truth. And so in that is everyone's journey. And it's okay to make mistakes. Yes. It's okay and the word error, the root word of error is actually to wander. Yes. To wander off the path. Right. So wandering is making errors, but everyone wanders, and it's nice to wander around because and you always come back to the path. So it's like, that's how I kind of see errors now. It's not like this like, I messed up, and because the logical mind hates that. Yes. It just hates to be wrong. And so I think it needs a part of that, like, it has to, and what's funny about it is the most logical thing is that things aren't all logical. So that's and so the fact that logic thinks that logic is the most logical thing is actually incorrect in itself. Yeah. That's why I think purely logic just kind of is toxic. Yeah. And it tends to creep into society and cause a lot of restriction. Yeah, well, in clinic. So Jeff Bezos recently said, I heard him talk about when the anecdote and the data don't line up, the anecdote is right. Mm-hmm. And so the same thing works with me in terms of with a patient. If what you believe is to be true, your anecdote versus what the data shows don't line up, I will always go with the patient. Mm-hmm. So, for example, MRIs.
I get people with the MRIs and they come to me and the MRI comes clear, but they're like, I know in my body there's something not right with my shoulder. Am I just going to be like, no, the MRI was clear? It's like, you're fine. I always, unless it's very clear, I will typically go with what the patient believes. I'll be like, what feels right for you? What do you think's going on? That's pretty much one of the main questions I'll ask in the initial is, what do you think's going on? Why do you think it happened? How do we get it better? And listen to their truth. And that on its own, typically you will get the answer from there. Yeah, like they'll get clarity.
Can you give a couple of examples of your work with patients like that, where it's it's come up there?
So I have one patient, for example, he was in this horrific motor vehicle accident and he's got prosthetic joints and he's in chronic pain. Like it was just a mess of a situation. And he's getting horrible, horrible pain in his shoulder. And people are saying, oh, it's from your neck or it's from your, it's from here. The MRI shows that the shoulder's clear and everything like that. And he's just frustrated. He's like, mate, I know it's here. My issue is here, 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 here. I know it. And then just as me validating him and saying, mate, I trust you. I believe you. And I'm going to work with that spot. And then doing what I have my skills to do that. Not only did it help him physically, we haven't cured the problem yet because the poor guy's got horrific injuries from that, but we were able to improve his function, his range, everything like that. And he's improving significantly. He's reaching goals that he hasn't been able to do for the last couple of years. So that's one example. Another example, so I've got a few. So I guess another one would be a patient that I have who she's got a lesion in her brain at the moment. And so without giving too much details because she's very private, basically she's got issues that haven't been acknowledged by anyone else. And that's just because, unfortunately, she's got a lot going on. But I just listen to her because I'm a chiropractor. Like, what's a chiropractor going to do for a brain lesion type of thing? So I just go, what's going on and how can we improve it? And I just listen. And then I just try and do my best to do that. And when she feels seen and acknowledged and I'm trying to help her in what's going on, I think that creates a significant difference. I don't know, maybe it is placebo. Maybe
placebo.
100% placebo. But maybe it's deeper than placebo. Maybe all you need is the acknowledgement with evidence-based neurological approach.
Yeah, because just the acknowledgement is being able to share your story.
Yes.
You feel like you've alchemized something within you.
Yeah.
Which is going to have an emotional, psychological effect plus the logical, anatomical, everything. So it's kind of it's the balance, right? So there's your truth and the body's truth.
Yeah.
And there could be two different things, right? Your thoughts and the body, it could be two different things. So yoga is the practice of that, right? Yoga is the practice of, it literally means to join. So it's practicing the mind with the body so that they're coherent. And there's a really interesting guy, Naudi Aguilera. He's the creator of functional patterns, which I really love.
Yeah.
I love the concept of functional patterns, and I agree with it at 110%.
Yeah.
But he's an example that's very logical, where he's become so obsessed with his way that it's the only right way that he discounts yoga. And not to say that yoga doesn't have negative effects in terms of anatomical movement, like what he's talking about. It probably does. But it's not about the anatomical movement. It's about the philosophy and the emotional part of it, which I think is the Eastern philosophy. So he kind of misses that.
Yeah.
But what's funny, when I heard his work, I hear the truth, because he talks about, going back to our walking gait, our running, throwing, and just like standing. And that's our primal movement, so our functional movement. And there's a lot of study done on the fact that if you move functionally better, it actually regulates your hormones. And so a lot of hormone out of balances come from the lack of functional movement in the body.
Yeah.
And so he's 100% correct in saying that, because I know, man, I do deadlifts, and that was my old way of training: deadlifts, bench press, like. Great. These are great for strength building, but in terms of functional anatomy, in terms of functional, the body functioning, so the hormones are functioning together, the liver's work, like everything like that, you need different styles of movement for that, different paces, and something that's a bit more primal, like we're used to, and that brings the body back into like a pain-free sort of state.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, man, like how, it comes back to the truth. I think you feel it too when you train a certain way. Like you feel like I walk out, and if you're walking out with back pain after you do deadlifts, like I'm like, that's not right.
Yeah.
Like put me in pain like that. Like some people are okay with it, but again, it could be something different with your body and anatomical structure.
Yes.
And so you got to go back to the basics.
Yeah.
That's really, really it.
So I guess from this conversation, if someone came to me like, oh, I love deadlifting, but it's causing me pain, I'd be like, what's the truth about this?
Yeah.
Like, find your truth. Is it good for you? Is it the right thing for you?
Yeah.
Like I could justify everyone needs to deadlift, but maybe, but for you and your truth, is it? And that's a hard conversation to have. Maybe not with deadlifts, or maybe because exercise is so important to you. Deadlifting is a big part of that. It's part of your identity.
Yeah.
But for anything, if you ask them, what's your truth about this and that, it's a very hard conversation to have. And if you unpack it, then in there comes flourishing and nourishing.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, man. We'll start to wrap this up soon, but I did have a couple of, one topic I wanted to talk to you about was like Jordan Peterson's work, because that's how we connected and stuff like that. So what got you into his work, and like what parts of it kind of changed and adapted you? Because, I guess the whole point of you transitioning from the very beginning from a boy to an adolescent to a man, I have a feeling that's probably
100%
part of the process. I had the exact same experience, and so I think it's beneficial for people to hear about that as well and their experience with that.
So I started to find Jordan Peterson's work around the time when I got into chiropractic.
So what age were you then?
I was about 22.
Okay.
I was about 22 or so when I started to get into his work. And everything that he said just resonated with me, and I had understanding. But when I heard his interpretation of the biblical series and the Genesis, and him explaining the story of Adam and Eve from a psychological perspective, the story of Cain and Abel, which blew my mind about, being resentful and everything will come back. God will get you back. If you go and do the wrong thing, God will get you back, whatever that means, right? Or just all these stories kind of made me realize that there's more purpose and more meaning to what I'm doing, and you can find that in anything that you're doing, anything. And so then I had purpose, I had meaning, and I had guidance of, okay, I no longer can be a boy, I need to be a man.
Yeah.
Because if not, then the world's going to eat me up.
Yeah.
Like if I decide to just be a boy and just stay at home and be coddled and be looked after by my parents who are amazing parents, then I'm not going to grow, and then my demons, the world's going to eat me up, and my own head's going to eat me up, and I'm just going to collapse, and I'm going to be a shell of a man, a shell of a human, not even a man, just a shell of a human. So I decided to go and do the hard work, and then I think I used, Jordan Peterson as a role model. He challenged the norm, and he questioned everything, and he is brave enough to go against what is the norm for the truth.
Yeah.
Right? Very common. Yeah. And so that's when I started challenging everything at uni and started to go down that. And then he just, his lessons are all about how to be a well-functioning human in society. And so I just got inspiration from that and decided to do a lot of his work, the future authoring program where you and then just subconscious writing, fantastic, writing nonstop for 15 minutes. It always goes for 45 minutes by the end of it. And you're like, how did my back pain? Yeah, I've done that. Like where my rib pain, I got rib pain very randomly and I couldn't sleep for 3 days straight. Yeah. Like I'd probably got 3 hours sleep in 3 days straight. And then it was horrible. And just wrote, why is my rib in pain? And put a time of 15 minutes, unpacked for 45. And then it came down to like, I feel insecure about, I don't know, the impact that I'm making in the world and I need to be doing more. And like this rib stopped me, and I just kept on writing, and I didn't know. So subconscious writing, future author program, all these types of work that Jordan Peterson suggests, it transformed me and showed me what it is to be a man, essentially. To provide and to lead and to protect. And I think that's a big part for me is protect.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. And do you have, I guess, like 3 tips for the audience? So if they were just like at home, they wanted to adjust their bodies or just take better care of their health, and what are the 3 things you found in your practice that you would recommend to people?
So you absolutely have to prioritize sleep. That's the number one thing I think in what I see is if you prioritize sleep, it will have a knock-on effect to everything in your life. Relationships, health, work, performance, everything. So doing what you can to prioritize sleep, like circadian rhythm, so like getting sunlight first thing in the morning, trying to dim blue lights at night, all these types of things are great. Vagus nerve stimulation. So stimulating that vagus nerve, which will regulate your rest and digest system. Simple ways is splashing water on your face. Singing is a really good way to do that. And so on your drive to work or whatever you are, sing in the car. Laughing is a huge part of the vagus nerve stimulation. So rapport, connection, using that right brain and being with people and having a good laugh is going to stimulate that vagus nerve. And then there's another one that I don't understand why, but I just do it anyway. But it's just basically closing your eyes and gently putting pressure on them for 10 seconds and doing that for a couple of sets. Supposedly stimulates the vagus nerve and just helps you go into that rest and digest system. And then the third, I would say, is just stick to your truth. A common thing that I've constantly said in practice is do what's right, not what's easy. And then what's right is always going to be the truth.
Yeah.
Right? So those are probably my big 3. And I think if you do those, your musculoskeletal health, your pains and aches in the body should improve significantly, depending on obviously what it is. But overall, your health will just be better.
Awesome, man. And then where can people find you? I know you're in Manly. You practice over there. You're doing stuff online. What's the...
So I'm here in Manly. I'm at Akash Integrative Health, and then I'm also in Belrose at a clinic with my mentor from way back when. In fact, they were the ones that got me into chiropractic, called Balance Health and Performance. And so I'm in those 2 clinics. And then the other days I'm supervising and tutoring.
Beautiful, man. And you're looking for affiliates too, who you can work with, collaborate with. So anyone in particular,
just anyone with like a purpose to help and make the world flourish, make people flourish, anything like that, I'm happy to work with.
Awesome, man. Yeah. Well, thanks, bro. That was an awesome podcast, man. I learned a lot as well from your stuff. So, yeah.
There you go.
All right, thanks, guys, for tuning in. I'll see you in the next episode. Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening to today's episode and for tuning into my podcast. From the bottom of my heart, your support truly means the world to me. If you enjoyed today's episode, if it sparked a new idea, connected you to the world, or simply gave you a greater sense of happiness, I have a small favor to ask. It would absolutely make my day if you could share this podcast with someone you care about, whether it's a friend, a family member, or a colleague. Simply send them a quick text with a link to the episode. Introducing them into something that you enjoyed would really, really help me and help the show out. So once again, thank you for your continued support and for being part of this journey with me. Until next time, take care and keep spreading those good vibes. And I'll see you in the next episode.